You're not welcome here. Not anymore. Megan's words hit me like a gut punch. I stood there, the little blue cardigan I'd knitted for Lucas still clutched, trembling, in my hands. My sweet 5-year-old grandson had hugged me moments before. Now his mother yanked him back. "What did I do, Megan?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "You know perfectly well," she replied, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Kevin might be blind to your little digs. Your suggestions about how I run my home, how I parent Lucas, how I manage my time. I'm not." I felt the ground give way beneath my feet. At 67, after raising 3 kids on my own, after surviving the early death of my Frank, was this how I was going to be treated? Like an intruder in my own son's life? Lucas looked from Megan to me, confused, his big eyes trying to understand why Grandma Pat looked so broken. Megan kept her hand firmly on his shoulder. "You should leave now," she said, opening the door wider, a silent command for my exit. I placed the cardigan on the entryway table. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped it. "Please give this to Lucas. It was made with love." I walked out, my heart shattered, utterly bewildered by what I had done wrong. How did we get here? How does a bond forged with such warmth curdle into this? It all started about 6 months ago. Until then, Megan and I had a relationship many mothers-in-law would envy. She called me Mom, invited me for Sunday dinners, asked for my recipes. When Lucas was born, I spent weeks at their house, helping with Lucas's first weeks. Kevin, my middle son, had always been the most sensitive of the 3. He lost his father at 12 and, in a way, became the man of the house. Far too soon. He met Megan in college, and from the first day he brought her home, I knew she was special. An easy smile, expressive eyes, a natural kindness that charmed everyone. Their wedding, 8 years ago, was a beautiful celebration. I remember crying throughout the ceremony, thinking how proud Frank would have been, seeing our son build his own family. Back then, I still lived in the house where I raised my children. Too big for a widow living alone, everyone said. But it was our home, the one Frank and I built, saturated with memories. I couldn't conceive of being anywhere else. When Lucas was born 5 years ago, my life gained a new purpose. Being a grandma was a completely different experience from being a mom. All the joy, none of the crushing responsibility. I could spoil him, tell him stories, teach him little mischiefs, and then hand him back to his parents. Megan seemed to appreciate my help at first. I went to their house 3 times a week, brought over frozen casseroles, stayed with Lucas so she could rest or run errands. Kevin always thanked me, called me an angel sent from above. But gradually, I noticed a shift, subtle at first. Megan's replies to my calls grew slower. The invitations for Sunday dinners became less frequent. My offers to visit met with a string of excuses. "We're really booked. Lucas has a cold. We have plans with her family." I admit it hurt, but I tried to understand. After all, they had their lives, their jobs, their friends. I didn't want to be that intrusive mother-in-law who smothers her daughter-in-law. About 3 months ago, I went to Lucas's birthday party. The house buzzed with kids and parents. And for the first time, I truly met Megan's family. Her mother, Brenda, an elegant woman with impeccably coiffed hair, ran the show. She orchestrated the dessert table, micromanaged the decorations, issued crisp orders to the hired help. When I approached to help, she smiled politely. "Don't worry, Pat. Everything's already under control." That day, a peculiar pattern emerged. Whenever I got close to Lucas, Brenda would appear with some distraction. A new toy, a treat, an activity. It was a subtle but unmistakable competition for Lucas's attention. During the happy birthday song, I stood next to Kevin. As everyone started singing, I commented quietly, "Lucas is so big, isn't he?" Seems like just yesterday I held him for the first time in the hospital. Kevin smiled, but before he could answer, Brenda from across the room said loudly, "Yes, and now he has a grandma who can be there for all his growth. Isn't that right, Lucas?" I felt like I'd been slapped. What did she mean by that? That I wasn't there for my grandson's growth? I looked at Kevin, expecting some reaction, but he just kept clapping, maybe not having heard the comment amidst all the singing. After that day, things got worse. My calls to Kevin were met with hurried, almost dismissive tones. When I asked about Lucas, the answers were vague. "He's fine, Mom. Everything's normal." Then last week, I finally swallowed my pride and called Megan's cell directly. I needed answers. No answer. So, I called Kevin, asking if I could stop by to drop off the cardigan I'd knitted for Lucas. He hesitated. His reluctance was palpable, even through the phone. "Come tomorrow at 4, Mom." And that's how I arrived at that devastating scene at their front door. Megan telling me I wasn't welcome, accusations of criticizing her home, her parenting, her time management, lies, every single one. I retreated home, gutted. I sat in Frank's favorite armchair and cried like I hadn't since his funeral. What had I done that was so terrible? Why did my daughter-in-law, who used to treat me like a second mother, now see me as an enemy? I spent 3 days barely left my room. Food was ashes in my mouth, purpose non-existent. Jennifer, my eldest daughter, started to worry when I didn't answer her calls. Jennifer, 45, a university professor in another city, usually checks in daily. On Wednesday, she showed up unannounced at my door. "Mom, what happened? You never miss my calls." Between sobs, I recounted everything. The door, Megan's accusations, my utter bewilderment. Jennifer listened carefully, holding my hands in hers. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "Mom," she said carefully, "I think I figured out what's going on. I spoke with a relative of Megan's, and it turns out Brenda, Megan's mom, has been making comments about you at family lunches." "Brenda?" I asked, confused. "But I barely know her. Our paths have barely crossed at family gatherings." "Exactly," Jennifer continued. "She's been spinning a web, Mom, whispering that you criticize how Megan parents Lucas, that you believe she's a bad mother, that you think her cooking is awful, her house a mess." "But I never said any of that," I exclaimed, horrified. How could she fabricate such lies? "I know, Mom, but it seems Brenda's jealous of the affection Lucas has for you. She wants to be the only grandma present. And from what I understand, she's been planting these seeds of doubt for months now." I fell silent, trying to process that information. It was so absurd, so petty. How could a grandmother want to drive another one away from her own grandchild? "What do I do now, Jennifer?" I asked, feeling utterly adrift. "I think you need to talk to Megan and Kevin. Clear the air. You can't let these lies fester and destroy your relationship with them." I spent the following days fortifying my resolve. On Sunday, I put on my best dress, the navy blue one Kevin always admired, and went to their house unannounced. I knew it was risky, but I had to try. Kevin answered the door, visibly surprised. "Mom, I don't think..." I need to talk to Megan, son. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. He hesitated, but something in my desperate gaze must have swayed him. He called Megan, who appeared with her arms crossed, a wall of defensiveness. Pat, we've already talked about this. No, Megan. You spoke. I listened. Now I need you to listen to me. 5 minutes, please. Reluctantly, she agreed. Kevin stayed in the living room, uncomfortable while I sat on the sofa, my hands trembling slightly. Megan, I found out there's been a misunderstanding. I never made negative comments about you. I would never, ever criticize the wonderful mother you are to Lucas. Someone has been twisting my words, planting false ones in your mind. Her eyes widened. Who? I'm not here to fan the flames of conflict, I replied, each word carefully chosen. I came because I love all of you, and I want you to know I respect your space, your decisions. If, in my eagerness, I ever truly overstepped or hurt you, I sincerely apologize. Megan was silent for a moment, her face a canvas of confusion and suspicion. My mom told me that you... I can only imagine, I interjected gently. But ask yourself, in all these years, have you ever heard me criticize you directly? I saw doubt flicker in her eyes. At that moment, Lucas ran into the living room, having escaped his supervisor. Grandma Pat! He shouted, throwing himself into my arms. I missed you. Why didn't you come anymore? I hugged my grandson tightly, his warm, small body against mine, the sweet scent of baby shampoo in his hair. I looked at Megan over Lucas's head and saw her eyes welling up. Lucas, honey, Grandma Pat was busy, she said, her voice trembling. But I'm sure she'll visit us more often now. Kevin approached, placing his hand on his wife's shoulder. I think we need to talk, Megan. All of us. In that moment, a fragile ember of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, this fractured bond could begin to heal. Lucas tugged my hand. Grandma, come see my new game. Dad got it yesterday. I glanced at Megan, silently asking for permission. She hesitated for a second, then gave a slight nod. As I followed my grandson down the hall, I heard Kevin murmur to Megan, I think we need to call your mom. I didn't know what would happen next. If Megan would confront her mom, if she'd fully believe me, if our relationship could ever truly be whole again. But today, at least, I'd taken the first step to begin reclaiming my family. And as I watched Lucas excitedly show me his new video game, a painful truth crystallized. It wasn't me. Megan didn't want around. It was a grotesque caricature of me, painted by someone else's venom. Now all I could do was hope truth would pierce through the lies that had driven us apart. As Lucas continued to show me his new game, perched on the edge of his superhero-themed bed, I could hear muffled voices drifting from the living room. Kevin and Megan were talking in low, intense tones. I couldn't make out the words, just the emotional rhythm of their conversation. Grandma, are you paying attention? Lucas tugged my sleeve, his intense gaze demanding my full attention. Of course I am, sweetie. I smiled, forcing myself to focus on him. That blue dragon is quite something, isn't he? That's not a dragon, Grandma. It's an aquatic dinosaur, he corrected with that earnestness only children reserve for matters of utmost importance. I spent almost an hour in Lucas's room, a temporary sanctuary from the emotional tempest brewing in the living room. When I finally heard footsteps approaching, I instinctively stiffened. Megan appeared in the doorway, her eyes still faintly red. Lucas, bath time. Oh, Mom, just 5 more minutes with Grandma, he pleaded. You can pick this up tomorrow, she said, her gaze finding mine. If Grandma Pat can make it for lunch with us tomorrow. My heart did a little leap. Of course I can, I replied, trying not to show how much that simple invitation meant. After Lucas went for his bath, Megan invited me into the kitchen. Kevin was there, brewing coffee. I sat down at the table, the same kitchen table that had witnessed countless meals and so much laughter. Pat, Megan began, sitting across from me. I called my mom. She paused as if searching for the right words. At first, she denied everything, claimed I was imagining things. But when I pressed, when I repeated exactly what you told me today, she faltered, began contradicting herself. Kevin placed 3 mugs of coffee on the table and sat beside his wife. Mom, he said, his voice heavy with guilt. I should have seen what was happening. I should have questioned more, dug deeper. Don't blame yourself, sweetheart, I responded, reaching out to touch his hand. These situations are tricky. You were caught in the crossfire, Kevin, completely unaware. Megan took a sip of coffee, her hand still trembling. What I can't understand is why, she said, more to herself than to us. Why would my own mother do that? I thought for a moment before replying. You know, Megan, being a grandma is a very special experience. It's like getting a second chance at motherhood, but without all the responsibilities and worries. Maybe your mom felt like I was, taking up too much space. That doesn't justify lying, Kevin interjected, indignation lacing his voice. No, it doesn't, I agreed. But sometimes people do wrong things for reasons they don't fully understand themselves. Megan raised her eyes to mine, and I saw something different in them. A complex mix of regret and something akin to awe. How can you be so understanding after everything that's happened? She asked. I smiled faintly. I'm 67, sweetheart. I've seen a lot in this life, and I've learned that holding on to bitterness only corrodes the soul that carries it. That night, I drove home with a lighter heart. It wasn't all resolved, of course. Deep wounds rarely heal overnight, but it was a start. 3 days later, I received a text from Megan inviting me to Sunday dinner. When I arrived, she hugged me tightly at the door, a surprising, earnest embrace. I talked more with Kevin, she whispered, and I confronted my mom again too. I'm so sorry, Pat. Truly sorry. We walked in together, and to my surprise, the table was set for 5. Who else is coming? I asked, confused. Megan and Kevin exchanged glances. My mom and dad, she replied. I thought we needed to clear the air, all of us, together. A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't prepared to face Brenda so soon, but before I could fully process it, the doorbell rang. Brenda walked in, accompanied by her husband, a quiet man named Richard whom I barely knew. She seemed smaller somehow, less formidable than I remembered. Pat, she greeted dryly, avoiding my gaze. Dinner began in a stifling silence, punctuated only by Lucas's breathless questions about dessert. Kevin tried to keep a casual conversation going, talking about work, the weather, anything to puncture the heavy quiet. It was Megan who finally addressed the elephant in the room. I think we all know why we're here today, she said, setting her silverware down with a deliberate clink. We need to resolve this like adults for Lucas's sake. Brenda adjusted her napkin on her lap, visibly uncomfortable. I don't know what there is to resolve. There was a misunderstanding, that's all. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom, Megan replied firmly. You deliberately fabricated lies about Pat to drive a wedge between us. Richard looked at his wife, surprised. Brenda, What is she talking about? I was suddenly reminded of a scene from my own childhood. I must have been about 8 when I broke my mother's favorite vase. Terrified of my mother's wrath, I pointed the finger at my younger sister. My mother, ever perceptive, unearthed the truth, and she made me face not just the punishment for the broken vase, but more importantly for the lie. The truth hurts once, she'd told me. A lie hurts forever. Brenda, I said softly, breaking my own silence. I'm not here to condemn you, Brenda, or to sow further discord. I'm here because I love Kevin, Megan, and Lucas. And I'm sure you love them too. She finally met my gaze, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. When Frank passed, I continued, I thought I'd never be truly happy again. My children were my solace, my only joy. And when Lucas was born, well, it was as if a dormant part of my heart had jolted back to life. I imagine you felt the same way. Brenda didn't reply, but her eyes began to well up. We don't need to compete for his love, you know? There's an infinite capacity for love in a child's heart. You don't understand, she finally spoke, her voice almost a whisper. You have 3 children. Megan is my only child. Lucas, my only grandchild. And they always talked about you. Grandma Pat taught me this. Grandma Pat does that. Mom! Megan exclaimed, surprised. It's true, Brenda continued, tears now streaming down her face. I just felt replaced, like I wasn't important enough. In that moment, everything became clear to me. It wasn't anger or malice that had driven Brenda. It was insecurity, fear of losing her place. A feeling I knew intimately, though I had channeled it differently. I understand more than you imagine, I replied. When my children grew up and started their own families, I was afraid of being forgotten too, of being left behind. Kevin reached for my hand across the table, squeezing it gently, but I realized it's not a competition. Each of us brings something unique. Lucas doesn't love me more because he loves you less. Love doesn't work that way. Richard put an arm around his wife's shoulders, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I'm so sorry, she said between sobs. I don't know what came over me. I've never been like this before. Megan, who until then had held a tight, unforgiving expression, softened her gaze. She rose and went to her mother, embracing her. I love you too, Mom, and Lucas adores you. I never doubted that. Lucas, who had been sent to his room as the conversation grew strained, appeared in the doorway of the dining room. Why is Grandma Brenda crying? He asked, worried. It's okay, sweetie, Megan replied. Sometimes grown-ups cry too when they're fixing things. Like when I clean up my toys and I'm sad because I wanted to keep playing. He asked with that impeccable, childlike logic. We all chuckled. The tension in the room finally fractured. Exactly like that, I replied. In the following weeks, things slowly, perceptibly, shifted. Megan started calling me regularly again. The invitations to visit became frequent once more. And to my surprise, Brenda was present at some of those get-togethers too. At first, it was strange, of course. A lingering awkwardness, a delicate tension, still hovered. But with time, we began to find a new balance. A month after that revealing dinner, Megan organized a picnic at the park. Lucas ran back and forth, a whirlwind of endless energy. At one point, he came over to where Brenda and I were sitting under the shade of a tree. Grandma Pat, Grandma Brenda, come see what I found. We exchanged a glance and smiled. We rose together, each taking one of his little hands, as he guided us to see a particularly interesting beetle he'd discovered. He has 2 grandmas who love him very much, I commented. He's lucky, Brenda replied, and for the first time, I heard genuine sincerity in her voice. That afternoon, as I watched my son, Kevin, and his wife Megan lay out the picnic blanket, Lucas running in circles, and even Brenda offering a hand with the food, a profound gratitude swelled within me. Life had taught me another valuable lesson. Sometimes what feels like personal rejection is just a reflection of someone else's insecurities. And with patience, honesty, and a little courage, even the most entrenched misunderstandings can yield. Last week, I got a text from Megan inviting me to Sunday dinner. When I arrived, she hugged me tight. "I talked to Kevin," she whispered. "And I also confronted my mom. I'm so sorry, Pat." The truth, once unleashed, irrevocably altered everything. Not because I'd gotten my place back in the family, but because I learned that, even at 67, I still had the strength to defend my dignity with love, without harboring any more resentment. Now, whenever I visit, I always bring a little something for Brenda, too. Last time, it was an old cookbook I found at a used bookstore. Grandma's Kitchen, Recipes for Little Ones. She smiled when she took it, a genuine, unfamiliar smile. "We could try some of these recipes together," she suggested timidly. "Lucas just loves cookies." "I'd love that," I replied sincerely. Last night, while I was knitting a new scarf for Lucas, winter's coming after all, I reflected on the winding path that had led me here. I thought about how I'd been ready to accept that I'd done something terrible, even without knowing what it was. How I'd nearly allowed insidious lies to unravel a precious relationship. And I realized that, in the end, it wasn't me Megan didn't want in her home. It wasn't me she was rejecting. It was a distorted version of me, created by poisonous whispers. Truth, I now knew, possessed a liberating power no lie could long contain. Like a stubborn seed, it relentlessly seeks the light, no matter how deeply it's buried. At 67, I learned that it's never too late to stand up for your truth, to fight for your rightful place, both in the world and in the hearts of those you cherish. And that sometimes the greatest act of love we can offer is understanding, even for those who have hurt us. Tomorrow's Sunday again. There'll be another family dinner. Lucas will probably run up to show me some new drawing or toy. Kevin will hug me tight, like he always does. Megan will make that chicken pot pie she knows I love. And Brenda will be there too, still navigating her place in this fragile, evolving dynamic we're building together. And I'll be grateful for every moment, every smile, every hug. Because now I know, with more certainty than ever, that family isn't just the one we're born into, or the one we create. It's the one we choose to protect, nurture, and forgive every single day. It wasn't me she didn't want there. It was the fear that had taken root in her heart. But now, with that fear exposed to the bracing light of truth, there is enough room for us all.